his appearance today, really, you could teach philosophy anytime. It is when you were scouting, and I'm watching that game last night, Raiders Dolphins, and I'm like, it's just not tight. It doesn't feel right. When you were scouting for a team, or even in a locker room, do teams know they're done, or do coaches know they're done first?
Man, God, that's a good question. I think it's a little bit of vice versa. I think from a coaching standpoint, you're well aware of what your strengths and weaknesses are, and you're scared that the other team or the other teams will quickly find out your DNA and what can really cause you a lot of problems. As players, you're also aware of how we kind of fit and how we have to play to win. We also know who our real players are and who are kind of the frauds on the team. And so depending upon where those frauds are positioned, is the quarterback? Is it another pivotal playmaker that we don't trust? Yeah, when the season is done, when more is placed on them, then you know that they can handle.
What happens, though, when you have a Matt Ryan who's an MVP and then he reverts back to good? How do you think that plays in a locker room? Now, Julio Jones dropped a touchdown yesterday. That was a big part of that game. But what happens when players get briefly elevated? How do players see them?
Well, players automatically know. So regardless of what the outside noise is saying, what the outside world is saying about a player, guys who are closest to him every day, see him in practice, see him in the offseason workouts, see him in games, see him in key moments and how he delivers, they understand what he is. I think the big thing for Matt Ryan, if you're one of his teammates, because the cast is exactly the same.
Right.
You're trying to figure out, okay, Matt, what is it? Is it the way the plays are being called? Is it the structure of the offense? And if you're a guy, Matt Ryan should have the ability to walk and knock on Steve Sarkisian's door and say, hey, here's what works for me. This is what we need to be doing, because they have that kind of cachet. Now, I grew up in the league with Jim Kelly and Dan Marino, played with Brett Favre, Rich Gannon. Those guys were very
alpha
males. They didn't mind telling the coach, like, look, here's what we need to do. This is what I want to do. And they had to sway because they had everything behind them. Their resume suggested that they should be decision makers when it came to
Matt may not be
is.
that guy.
He may not be that guy. And I think that is the key. When we talk about the quarterback position, a lot of it is like the physical, but it's the intangible part. What do they bring to the table in terms of leadership? Are they able to be a little prickly? Aaron Rodgers is a prickly guy. Aaron Rodgers, I'm sure, doesn't have a problem telling Mike McCarthy exactly how he feels about a given situation. That's kind of part of the deal. That's what you expect from your quarterback.
What happens when you're Jared Goff, where you look physically incapable of walking and talking, and then you bring in a great coach and it elevates you? I can make the argument that physically Goff is not imposing. And then I watch him yesterday. Is it Gurley? Is it McVay? How much is Goff?
I mean, I think Goff was worthy of being number one and number two. I was a big Jared Goff fan coming out. I thought he and Carson Wentz were both guys that could be franchise quarterbacks.
Okay, you did.
I saw Goff more in the light of a Matt Ryan in terms of
that's
how
what
he played.
I think he's he's a more talented version of Matt.
And I think that's a good comparison. That's how I compared him when he was coming out. I do believe the right things around you can elevate your play. He is in a nice situation. He has a great play call in Sean McVay, who has really found a way to make it very, very simple for him. And McVay does all the stuff pre-snap to make, I'm going to give the defense a different look, but it's the same play over and over and over again. Then they surrounded him with nice weapons that were dependable. When I talked to some of the people in the Rams organization, they said last year he had wide receivers. They had no idea where those guys would end up at the top of the route. Now he has dependable guys, Robert Woods, Sammy Watkins, Cooper Kupp. He knows exactly where it's going to be, so now he has a level of confidence and trust that he can let the ball go before the break, knowing that those guys are going to get there. So it's been a perfect storm for the L.A. Rams because the play caller and the new guys that they brought in all help elevate the play of the quarterback.
Here's a moment yesterday from Cam Newton, Joe Buck, and Troy Aikman on the call, and I always use the term quarterback-eel. Let's play the tape here if we could, Sam. Thank you.
Riverboat Ron, but he's not going to, and Cam Newton's not happy about it. You know, I've had some disagreements. I don't know that I've ever seen a reaction. Quarterbacks, you know, generally we always want to go for it. I don't know. I've never seen a reaction like that from a quarterback.
You could read the lips of Ron Rivera. He said, don't do that.
Yeah.
That just doesn't look good.
for the record, my audience thinks, I did a survey a couple of weeks ago, 10,000 people, 75% said, Colin, you're not being unfair. What you're saying is true. So I'll let you take the leadership in this spot. What did you make of that?
That doesn't bother me because that's an in-game deal. That is a situation. He's in the game. He's in the moment. He wants to go. And the way that they have basically made their team better with addition by subtraction, when they remove Kelvin Benjamin, they put more on Cam. And I'm a believer that Cam responds better with less than he does with more. And so what they were asking him to do yesterday, run the ball, throw it, be everything. So when he has all that on him, emotionally, he's like, hey, if you want to put it on me, then put it on me. Let me do it. So I saw it as more of a reaction to, you want me to do the deal.
I'm going to bark.
So let me do it. And so that's kind of part of the alpha male, the alpha dog thing that we were talking about. The press conference stuff, to me, I separate because that's away from the game. That's separate and apart.
You don't love it.
You want him to act a certain way. But on the field, you kind of have to let him be how he is because I think that is when he plays his best, when he's emotionally engaged in the game.
Bucky Brooks joining us, former player, NFL scout. So Peter King said this earlier. He suggested that, and it's a weird thing, Bucky, how it works. When you're looking at, there are these moments in life. I've moved across country 4 times, and each time there's been a moment, like a sign, a bat signal. I'm like, I'm going to go. I'm not. Kirk Cousins has that last drive against Seattle yesterday. And it kind of makes you say to yourself, Peter King said, how do you fly back home and not make him the franchise quarterback? That's against Seattle on the road. Now, maybe that's overstating the moment, but that was a big moment for Kirk Cousins, right?
Oh, it was. It was a very big moment. There were plenty of us when we were watching the game that doubted if he could make that big throw. But here's the deal when you're Kirk Cousins and you're looking at him and you're looking at the complete resume. How many times has he delivered in that spot? How many times can we count on him? What is the feeling in the organization with 2 minutes left, Kirk Cousins have the ball? Do we really feel like he's going to lead us there, or we're hoping that he can do it? I would say that on the outside looking in, the Redskins hope that he can make those plays. They don't necessarily expect him to make the plays. It's the feeling that you get if Tom Brady's in that same situation, how do we feel? Well, we feel like it's going to be a done deal. He's going to find a way to win. With Kurt, we need to see more evidence. And I know it's unfair to say that. He's played on the franchise tag a couple times. But I think the issue with the Redskins, when they see him every day, do you really feel like he's that guy that gives you hope when he has the ball at the end? Or is he a guy that we think may do it, but we're not sure? I think that is the reason why there's been such the hesitancy and the pause before you decide to give him the money that would make him the franchise quarterback.
Bucky Brooks. I suggested earlier the NFL's cyclical. It's a copycat league. And, if Belichick does something, we fell for the Wildcat, which was hiking the ball to a running back. And, even the Patriots put a version of the Wildcat in. So I'm watching Gurley, and I'm watching Fournette, and I'm watching the young running back for the Saints, and I'm watching Le'Veon Bell for the Steelers. And I'm like, okay. There was this narrative for a few years, running backs are a dime a dozen. Yeah. And I'm like, no, I looked at the record today, 23-10 of the top 4 running backs in the league. And I looked at the top receivers, and it's sub 500. Is it possible the emergence of the running back is returned?
Oh, absolutely. And I think it was overblown when we talked about the devaluation of the running back position. It's been devalued on draft day, but it's not diminished in importance. If you ask any defensive coordinator, and I talked to one this morning, they still talk about every defensive coordinator goes into the game intent on stopping the run and making the team become one-dimensional in their approach. When you have a talented, elite-level running back, it changes the equation. It levels the playing field. It allows you to play with quarterbacks who may not be at their best. And so you talk about the top running backs and how they're playing. Well, one, in New Orleans, Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara have allowed the Saints to kind of move away from Drew Brees having to do everything. Because Drew Brees is getting older. He's not what he was
he's not.
A few years ago. So now with the elevation of their running backs in their running game, they now don't have to lean on Drew Brees to be what he was a couple years ago. You think about in Dallas when they have Ezekiel Elliott. And I like Dak Prescott. I think Dak Prescott's one of the best young quarterbacks that we have. But it's different when you have Ezekiel Elliott who can offset the burden and the pressure that's on him to carry that offense. Le'Veon Bell, because Big Ben is being a little different, he's kind of declining. Le'Veon Bell takes some of the pressure off of Big Ben. So the better the runner, the better the running back in terms of being a hybrid or whatever, the less the burden is on the quarterback to have to do everything. And if you do that, it really dictates the terms and makes life easier for the quarterback and the play caller.
And finally, I don't know what to make of Marcus Mariota. Now, a couple years ago, he was good in the red zone, and maybe now it's just because he has a hamstring pull, so he's not as mobile. Is it the staff? Now, that's a defensive-led staff. They've got some really good defensive guys on that staff. I'm not sure what to make of him.
I think whatever you feel about Marcus Mariota is probably very similar to how you feel about Alex Smith, meaning
just
talented dual-threat quarterbacks.
Okay.
But they have to be in the right system to allow them to flourish. They may not be transcendent in terms of their games being able to play in every system. With Marcus Mariota, when you rob him of his legs, it takes away a big part of his game. And he needs just that part of it. Running 5 or 6 times changes the way the defense has to play him. But when you can find him to the pocket and he now has to become the guy that has to deliver from the grassy knoll, it changes. And so if he doesn't have his athleticism, I don't want to say he's a middle-of-the-road quarterback, but he's certainly not special in that capacity.
Dave Wannstedt showed me a number yesterday, and he's like, hamstrings good, here's his red zone numbers. Hamstrings not good, here is red zone. And to your point, if he can't do that zone action read, he doesn't
the red zone, because that's when they use it. He scores. Think about the amount of times you've seen highlights where he trots around the corner for a touchdown. In the red zone is when they really utilize his legs. Well, when you don't have that, now he is not a factor. Now we can play more pass. We don't have to worry about him in the run game. We can focus on the running back and defend the pass. Without his athleticism, it changes how you can play red zone defense.
Hey, bottom line, 2 red zone touchdowns become field goals. That's 8 points. That's almost double the average NFL outcome. So to your point, you don't think it's a big deal, but it's 2 plays a game in the red zone that you'd call a zone read and he can't do them. It's a different quarterback.
And that is the evolution of quarterback when we talk about the guys that are coming up through the ranks and how we're trying to run all the dual threats out. It's not necessarily that you want your quarterback to be the primary runner, but you would like him to run 4 to 6 times a game, just enough to be able to take advantage of the defense and to keep them honest. You look at Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott played in the spread at Mississippi State. When does he run? In the red zone, on 3rd and short, occasionally to keep them honest. You want those runs to be those big moment plays. First downs, touchdowns.
Good seeing you, bud.
Cool, thanks.
As a business owner, you know how important it is to keep moving forward. A lot of times things come up, take your time, focus away from growing your biz. So when it comes to reviewing contracts, staying current on fees, permits, trademarks, that's complicated stuff. And if you're a business person, it may not be your expertise. Let LegalZoom do it. Created 16 years ago by the brightest minds in law and technology. More than 2 million business owners easily and affordably navigate the legal system with confidence. Take the pressure off. Let the experts step in when it comes to permits, fees, contracts, registering for trademarks, complicated stuff that may not be in your wheelhouse. Go to LegalZoom.com now. LegalZoom.com. Code is Colin, COLIN.